The power died at 2:47 p.m. Not a polite flicker, not a maybe it'll come back, but a hard dead silence that swallowed the whole street. Wind hammered the siding. Rain went sideways, and when I pulled the starter cord on my generator, the low rumble barely mattered, until someone started pounding on my front door like they owned the place. I opened it to find Melissa Klein, the HOA president, holding a violation notice and a $500 fine like she'd just caught me committing a felony. I live in Maplewood Trails, the kind of neighborhood that looks like a postcard and operates like a small, smiling bureaucracy. Perfect lawns, matching fences, community standards, and an HOA board that treats every storm, every emergency, every real-life problem like it's just another line item. I'm not the loud guy on the street. I'm the guy who pays dues, keeps receipts, follows the rules that actually exist, and moves on with my life. That's why the generator was already there. Months earlier, I'd bought it, installed it safely, and kept it for one reason: when the grid goes down, my house doesn't become a casualty. This storm wasn't some light rain. The utility app was showing multi-day restoration estimates, the gutters were overflowing, and my sump pump was doing that frantic gurgle that tells you water is about to start negotiating with your foundation. Melissa stood under my porch light in a rain jacket that cost more than my monthly car payment. Eyes sharp, mouth already in official statement mode. "Ethan," she said loud enough for the neighbors to hear over the wind, "you need to shut that down immediately." I didn't debate emotions. I stated facts. It's an emergency power source. My basement pump needs it. My fridge needs it. She lifted the paper like it was a badge. Homeowners Association noise restrictions. You're in violation, $500. I stared at the notice, then at her. Not because I was confused, because it was ridiculous. "Melissa," I said, keeping my voice level, "the entire neighborhood is dark. People are running generators everywhere in a storm like this." She didn't blink. "I don't hear theirs, I hear yours, and you have 1 hour before additional fines begin." That's the thing about someone like Melissa Klein. She doesn't care about the reality in front of her, she cares about control, and she cares about the performance of control. I closed the door, not because I was defeated, but because arguing on a porch in a hurricane is how you end up on the internet for the wrong reasons. Inside, I looked at my phone. No power updates, no help coming, and now a fine that felt less like a rule and more like a threat. By the next morning, the storm had moved on and left the neighborhood in that ugly, quiet, downed branches, soaked lawns, people checking on each other, and that strange smell of wet insulation. And taped to my door was another notice from the HOA, like they were delivering pizza. Same violation, a second fee, and a line at the bottom that made my jaw tighten: non-compliance may result in legal action. I didn't take that personally, I took it seriously. Because legal action from an HOA isn't just a scary phrase, it's liens, attorneys, court dates, and months of your life being dragged through somebody else's ego. So I did what I always do when someone tries to bully me with paperwork. I went to the source. I pulled up the Homeowners Association documents, the covenants, the bylaws, the rules, the amendments, the whole stack of stuff no one reads until someone like Melissa decides to turn it into a weapon. I searched generator, nothing. I searched decibel, nothing. The noise restriction was vague. No actual measurement, no actual enforcement standard, just words like disturbing and unreasonable. In other words, it was perfect for selective enforcement. Perfect for, I don't like you, so you're the problem. That's when I noticed something else in the documents. The HOA's responsibility for common infrastructure, specifically the pump house. Most people in the neighborhood had no idea it even existed. It sat behind a locked utility gate near the retention pond controlling irrigation and stormwater flow. The kind of thing you only learn about when you've watched water creep toward your foundation before. And the more I read, the clearer it got during storms that pump house mattered. A lot. Later that afternoon, my phone lit up with neighborhood posts. Not complaints about my generator, complaints about water. Anyone else's yard turning into a swamp retention pond is rising fast. Why isn't the drainage working? Then someone posted the photo that changed the whole tone. The pump house gate. Open. And a comment, looks like the system's not running. That's when Frank Dalton showed up at my place. Frank wasn't the president. He was the HOA board member who always tried to sound reasonable, like a guy who'd rather be grilling than dealing with angry neighbors, but somehow kept volunteering for committees. He stood on my porch and didn't waste time. "Ethan, do you know anything about the pump house power getting shut off?" I held his gaze. "I know the pump house is HOA responsibility. I know it shouldn't be failing during a storm week. That's what I know." His face tightened. "People are furious." "Good," I said. Not loud, not dramatic, just honest. Because they should be. 2 days later, while half the neighborhood was dealing with water issues and soggy carpets, I got a certified letter. Not a casual notice. Certified. The kind you sign for. It was from the HOA attorney. They claimed my generator violated community standards. They demanded immediate shutdown during any outages. They listed my fines now magically inflated. And then they went for the throat. They accused me of interfering with common property operations and warned that criminal charges could be pursued for vandalism. That's when the situation stopped being annoying and started being dangerous. Not physically, legally. So I called a lawyer. Her name was Dana Holloway, and she had the calm voice of someone who's watched this exact kind of bully burn themselves out 100 times. I sent her everything: the notices, the vague rules, the certified letter screenshots of the neighborhood posts about the pump house, the timeline. All of it. Dana didn't lecture me. She didn't ask me to reflect. She said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." She explained it in plain English. If the homeowners association wants to enforce a rule, they need a clear rule and consistent enforcement. If they want to accuse someone of sabotage, they need evidence, real evidence, not vibes and political grudges. And if they're threatening a lien or legal action over an emergency generator in a storm, that's not community management. That's abuse of power. Dana drafted a response so sharp it felt like it could cut paper through the envelope. Demand for proof. Demand for the exact rule they claim I violated. Demand for records of enforcement against other homes. And a reminder that false accusations can turn into liability on their end real fast. Then she said the line that mattered most. "We're not going to argue with Melissa's feelings. We're going to pin her to facts." The next day, the Homeowners Association announced an emergency meeting at the clubhouse. Not a cute community gathering. An emergency meeting because the neighborhood had turned on them. I showed up early, parked under a dying streetlight, and walked in with Dana's letter printed in a clean folder. The room was packed: wet jackets, tired faces. People who had been patient for years suddenly out of patience. Melissa Klein stood at the front like she was about to host a pageant. Frank sat nearby looking like a guy who'd been regretting his life choices since sunrise. Melissa tapped the microphone. "Order, please. We are here to address disruptions and vandalism." And that word vandalism hit the room like gasoline. People started talking over her instantly. My basement flooded. "Our fees pay for that pump house. You're blaming residents instead of fixing anything." Melissa raised her voice, trying to reclaim control. "We have reason to believe one homeowner acted maliciously." I didn't jump up screaming. I stood when there was a gap, and I spoke like someone reading a receipt at a counter. "I've received certified threats from the HOA attorney," I said, holding up the letter. "I've been fined for running emergency power during a storm." Meanwhile, the HOA pump house failed when the neighborhood needed it most. If we're talking about responsibility tonight, let's start there. Melissa's eyes locked on me, pure offended authority. "Your generator violated our noise rules." I didn't argue philosophy. I asked one question: "Show the decibel limit." Silence. She snapped, "It's considered unreasonable." By who? I said. Because the documents don't specify a measurement. They don't even mention generators, which means you're enforcing a vague rule selectively. And if you're accusing me of vandalism, you better have evidence, not assumptions. Frank shifted like he wanted to disappear into the chair. Other homeowners started nodding, murmuring, flipping through their own copies of the rules on their phones. Melissa tried to pivot. "This meeting is not about your personal grievances." And that's when someone in the back shouted, "Then why did you fine him during a hurricane?" The room exploded again. Not chaos reality. People were done being managed like children. A motion was made. A vote was demanded. And for the first time, Melissa looked like she realized she couldn't policy her way out of an angry crowd. They handed out ballots. We waited. The room went quiet in that heavy, uncomfortable way where you can hear paper moving and someone breathing too loud. The count took nearly an hour. No speeches. No grandstanding, just numbers being checked and rechecked while Melissa stared straight ahead like she was trying to will the outcome into obedience. Then the acting secretary stepped up and read it. Votes cast 342. In favor of removal, 218. Opposed 124. Motion passes. Melissa's face didn't crumble in a dramatic way. It went blank like her brain had to reboot. And then in one sharp motion, she shoved her chair back so hard it scraped the floor, grabbed her folder, and walked out without a word. No apology, no graceful exit, just the sound of her heels on the tile, getting quieter with every step. I didn't celebrate. I didn't high-five anyone. I just sat there holding my folder, listening to the room finally settle into stunned silence, because the point wasn't winning. The point was ending, the moment where one person thought they could turn the homeowners association into a personal weapon. Some people don't learn until the paperwork points back at them.